Hello there, welcome to Blitz Transmissions. I'm Tommy, and this video is my review and thoughts of the Skeleton Crew series. We just came off of this week, as of recording this, the 8th and final episode of Skeleton Crew, and I just have to say, through and through, from beginning to end, this show was so enjoyable. I remember when the first couple episodes came out in my first impressions video, I said that this show was a palate cleanser and a breath of fresh air. After coming off of The Acolyte, a lot of the Star Wars fandom found itself in a very polarized state. It reminded me a lot of when Episode 8, The Last Jedi, came out, with a very, very vocal part of the fandom, saying they did not like it, and then a very, very vocal part of the fandom saying that the people that didn't like it were bad people for not liking it. It was a very interesting time to be living in, and I think that both sides took it a little too far as going after each other's throats and things like that. But all that to say, I think that we needed something like Skeleton Crew to really just help the Star Wars fandom kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, heal from all of the controversy of The Acolyte. And this show did just that for me, and I know for a lot of my friends too. This show was great. It's not something that has to do with any legacy characters. It's not something that has to do with any major plot points that are going on in the time of the Mandoverse. We just got to experience a fun Star Wars story with a new cast of characters. I know for myself and many others, that's been something that the fandom has been really asking for and honestly starved for. We get new stories with new characters, but it always ends up tying back into legacy stories and legacy characters. So it was nice to just have a story like Skeleton Crew where we didn't have to do things like that. The cast was amazing. I just have to say, one of my first biggest, positive points to make about Skeleton Crew was the acting. I thought all four of the child actors that played Wim, Fern, Neil, and KB did a fantastic job. There was never a point where I felt like the acting really sucked or anything like that. They always kept me engaged, and I felt connected to the characters from the very beginning of the show. I think with this show, they really emphasized what it's like to be a child and what it's like to be a kid going on an adventure. Something that really solidified my positive feelings for this show was in the final episode, the show being able to stick the landing. There was a lot of inspiration drawn from 80s blockbusters, most namely The Goonies, I think is the most spitting image that this show can be. However, it was still really awesome to see the show do its own thing while still having those very, very obvious inspirations from that style of media. The end of the show is great. All your characters are reunited. However, the story just ends. We leave it a little bit open-ended. We don't necessarily need to know what happens with Jod. We don't necessarily need to know, what happens next for all the kids. I don't need like an epilogue that's voiced over by KB or some other character telling us what exactly happened next in the story. I like sometimes just having things left open to interpretation. We know the pirates have been defeated. We know the New Republic is here and they're dropping down on the planet to make contact with the people of At-Aden. And I'm honestly very, very happy with that ending. And I'm very happy that the company Lucasfilm was able to stick the landing on a Star Wars series. I feel like it's been a little while since an ending of a show has not felt so abrupt. A lot of these shows end very abruptly and they hurry up at the very end to tie the knot on things, and that can be because of a multitude of reasons. Me personally, I feel like the most commonly it's because of all the middle management in Lucasfilm that is, meddling with the creative process and the story, but with this show, I didn't feel that. This show, much like Andor, and I don't know if it's because it's a very self-contained story, it feels very cohesive. There's not really a point where I feel like they're trying to connect a bunch of dots between a bunch of other, pre-existing media, and that's a challenge that The Mandalorian and other shows in that direct group of characters and that direct storyline have decided to tackle, but that's the direction that The Mandalorian, was taking from the very beginning. With this show, I think that it's so much fun because I don't have to be thinking about the grand scheme of Star Wars while I'm watching. I can just sit back, enjoy episode to episode. And I know that my fiance Jen and I, we enjoyed the hell out of this show. It was such a fun watch. Every single episode, I was wanting more from the next week, and it was only out of excitement. You know, I bought all the action figures for this show, and I'm extremely happy that I bought all the action figures. I have no regrets. I'm honestly want to see more of these characters, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want a Skeleton Crew Season 2 per se, you know, and if they do decide to do that, I would hope that they wouldn't rush it and that it would just, you know, they would take their time with it. The acting was great, the pacing was great in this show, and I felt like the writing was on par with both the pacing and the acting. Everything, again, I think that maybe helped with the cohesive feeling that I felt with this series. Everyone seemed like they were enjoying their roles. Everyone seemed like they were very invested in their roles, and I think the script was done well. No, you know, the lines that the characters were delivering, especially the kids. You know, I really have to give props to the writing team. The kids sound like 10 to 12-year-old kids. They act like 10 to 12-year-old kids, and I think that was one of the biggest positives for me for this show, was just how well the writers did giving the kids their dialogue and how well the kids executed that. Everything that happens in this show that you might think is like just a kind of filler moment ends up popping up again by the end of the show. You know, I think it's the third episode, they go and they meet Kim at the little observatory, which is totally a Dark Crystal reference in my opinion. And that character I thought was just going to kind of be whatever to introduce the X-Wings. She ends up coming back in the final episode. And I like that so many points in this show that you would think are inconsequential in the moment end up popping up and having some significance later. It speaks to intelligent storytelling, and it speaks to thoughtful storytelling as well, and I really appreciate that as a Star Wars fan. Nothing about this show, to me, felt rushed, felt half-baked. Everything felt like it was thought through, and it was done passionately and thoughtfully. And as a Star Wars fan, that's all that I can really ask for. And I'm very, very happy, especially with some recent projects for me personally, you know, feeling a bit underwhelming, you know, most namely like Tales of the Empire or The Acolyte. To me, those projects were very underwhelming. And for this one, it was like, I didn't have huge expectations for this show going into it, but by the end of it, I came out loving it. And I will absolutely watch this show again. I've already rewatched pretty much every episode once or twice already, and this is definitely a show I'll go back and binge watch again. It's just got the whimsical magic that I think that Star Wars really needs right now. I think that the franchise really needs a fun Star Wars adventure that really brings the magic back. While it's cool that we have shows like Andor and shows that are much more heavy and much more gritty, we definitely need to balance that out, because while it's important to, you know, retain your older, more mature audience with projects that are more mature, it's also important to have that in between, you know, not necessarily stuff for babies, but something that's family friendly, something that we can all enjoy. When you sit down with your loved ones, whether they're, you know, 6 years old or 60 years old, something that everybody can enjoy together. And at the end of the day, Star Wars is a family story, and it's meant to be watched by a family. So, you know, I think that this show really exemplifies the best of Star Wars when it comes to those qualities and those traits, and I think that this show really accomplished that goal. Going into some more nitty-gritty with this show, I thought a lot of the special effects looked great. There was maybe only one or two shots through the entire show where I was like, that looked a little cheap, but most of the time, 99% of the time, really, all of the sequences with the ships, all the sequences with any CGI looked great. It looked very, very good, as it should for a Star Wars project that I guess technically came out in 2024, but I'm going to also count as a 2025 project. It was so much fun to see how many aliens were in the show, practical effects, practical costumes. It felt the most Star Wars to me as far as alien representation since the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars and Rebels. You know, I feel like in a lot of these newer projects that are, you know, live action, you have a lot of humans, almost too many humans to me sometimes. And for me, this show did a fantastic job of really honing in on that aspect of Star Wars as well. You can tell that the people that wrote this show and the people that created this show had a love for this franchise and actually cared about what they were making. It wasn't a cash grab. It wasn't something they were just trying to pump out to keep the content flowing. It's something that I think every Star Wars fan should watch. If you're burned out on Star Wars, Skeleton Crew is definitely a show I recommend watching. I think Skeleton Crew, especially for those who are burned out on the franchise, has the ability to bring back the reasons you fell in love with Star Wars as a kid, whether it be the magic of the aliens or the magic of the Force or the magic of anything, just the whimsical, magical storytelling. I think that that's something that Star Wars really needed right now. And if you're a fan that needs to have that magic sparked in you again, I think that Skeleton Crew is the show for you. Ultimately, Skeleton Crew probably ranks as one of my most favorite Disney Plus series that have come out since this whole Disney Plus era of Star Wars began in 2019 with The Mandalorian. I think this one is up there. It's up there for me with Ahsoka, with The Mandalorian, with Andor. I think it represents the best of what Star Wars has to offer, and especially for new characters and a new story. I think that they've done a fantastic job making a story that still feels like Star Wars, but kind of does its own thing and is self-contained. The lore of At-Aden was very compelling and very intriguing throughout the show. I loved the pirate lore. I loved the lore about Jad Nanawud and his reveal that he wasn't a Jedi, but he was actually trained by an Order 66 survivor, and then he had to witness his master killed in front of him, and that's why he is the person he is today. It's very nice. I love the fleshed out story. I love that there was mystery that felt compelling and intriguing and had payoff in the end. And I'm just babbling at this point. I love Skeleton Crew. And honestly, if I had to give Skeleton Crew a rating, like a letter grade, I think I would give Skeleton Crew an A. I honestly would. I think this show honestly gets like a 9 out of 10 from me. It's such a fun watch. It's such a much needed breath of fresh air for Star Wars, and I'm very happy with this show. I would like to see this level of quality and thoughtfulness continue with future Star Wars projects. With that being said, guys, that's my thoughts on Skeleton Crew. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts specifically about the series finale and just about the series as a whole with my fiance Jen, make sure to check out the upcoming episode of the Blitz cast, which will be coming out this week. We have an awesome discussion every single week about Skeleton Crew as it's been coming out, and I'm excited to wrap up that discussion with Jen this week on that podcast. Make sure to let me know what you guys thought of Skeleton Crew in the comments below. Did you think it was awesome? Did you enjoy it? Did you think it sucked? And do you think Star Wars should never touch a story like this with a 10-foot pole? Make sure to let me know in the comments. Of course, as always, if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you are an ARC Trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this video early, and if you'd like to join that, the link will be in the description below, as well as all the links to my YouTube channel membership and my social media. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed Skeleton Crew. I'll catch you for the next video. May the Force be with you.
Breaking off all units. Fire at will. 1-2, pick your targets. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got 2 vultures on my tail. Gotta hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit.